League of Women Voters. I'm Mary Ellen Dick. This is Dennis Marr. The League of Women Voters, and we are the Monterey County League. We are nonpartisan, which means we do not support or oppose any candidates. One of our core mission is to have an informed and active participation in government, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. So you will see some slides that say the league is supporting them. The league does not support anything unless we have a 2-year study across the country. Every little local league gets to do a study. It goes up to the regional, the state, the national, and then it gets adopted at the national level. If we don't have a policy study and a policy approved, there will be no endorsements from the league on anything. So just so you know. Next. Okay. These are the 10 propositions. Propositions are proposed laws presented to the public for a vote. Propositions can make new laws, they can affirm or defeat existing laws, they can change existing laws, and they can amend the California Constitution. And you're going to see most of them amongst this group of 10. Propositions can be placed on the ballot by either a petition, when you go out, gather the signatures, or by the state lawmakers. And the state lawmakers have to do it if they want to do something that amends the Constitution or sell bonds. After they've approved it, it has to come to the people for a vote. So at this point, the rule for public petitions is that you only need 5% of the number of people who voted for the governor in the last governor's race. So it's only less than 550,000 signatures you need to get a proposition on the ballot. Okay. How many votes? Okay, so how many votes? In this 10, all 10 of them only need a majority plus 1. 50% plus 1, that's it. All right, I'm going to be doing numbers in terms of with these, for each of them, we'll talk about what the fiscal impact is. So just so you know, the California state budget for this 24-25 years is just under $300 billion. That's with a B. The general fund of that, which is the discretionary-ish part of it, is $212 billion. The special funds, those are for things that the money has to be spent on what it's called for, is $84 billion, and bond funds is $2.4 billion. And right now, for our bonds, the state is authorized to issue $35 billion in bonds. Right now, we owe $80 billion for the bonds that have already been issued. The payments that the state is making, and these payments come out of the general fund, is $6 billion a year, which is only, I know with B's, it's hard to say only, but it's only 3% of the general fund to pay back all of the bonds that have been approved so far. All right, so we're into general obligation bonds is what the state sells when they want to raise money. And they sell it to investors, which can be you or me or a bank or a retirement fund. The payments on the bonds that are paid to the investors are paid from the general fund over 35 to 40 years. And just like any loan you probably have ever taken out, when you take out a bond, sell a bond, it takes about twice as much as the bond to pay it back. So, and just one last thing on bonds is that the people who borrow the money from the state have to write reports, and the state has to give the reports. They go back to the bondholders. So the accountability factor is built in, and where the money goes reports back to get the next payment and how the bond goes. Okay, so Prop 2, well, starting with money. The state is proposing to issue $10 billion in bonds, and this is a legislative bond. That means this one was not done by initiative. This was put on the ballot by the state legislators because they want to raise money. Okay. All right. So this is to authorize $10 billion in bonds to build new or renovate existing public school and community colleges. So this is K through 12 plus community college facilities. Right now in California, there are 10,000 public schools, plus or minus two or three, and 115 community colleges. The California and the local school districts split the cost of money from one of these bonds equally. If they want to do something, they make an application to get bond funds. They have to show what they want, all the estimates, that they're shovel ready, that they have the money to pay their share, and it's a 50-50. In a disadvantaged district such as Salinas, where they have low income, more low income, more English learners, or more foster youth, the California will pay a higher percent, like 60 or 65%, depending on the formula. And California is using these voter approved bonds to pay for its cost share. Right now, the way it is that many of our schools are older and outdated. They don't have air conditioning for the climate, the extra heat. They don't have the money for all the security things, for guns and the other kind of horrible things that happen in schools these days. They need health and safety repairs. They need renovations. They need more classrooms. I think if you drive past most any school, you'll see portable units all over the place. And the last time that the public approved a bond for schools was in 2016. All right. And right now, this year in California, 38% of our kids are in schools that do not meet minimum health and safety standards. 25 are in schools with damaged floors, ceilings, and walls. 15% have major deficiencies, gas leaks, power failures, structural damage, malfunctioning electrical systems. This proposition would raise $10 billion in general obligations, which would go some way to solving this, but not 100%. It would earmark $8.5 billion for the public schools, including charter schools who are located in public school facilities, $1.5 billion for the community colleges, and then some money set aside for really small districts, and $115 million to reduce the amount of lead in the water in the school pipes. It would also change the formula. So for a school who's got money or is, in an area with good money, then they would have to pay between 50 to 55% of the construction project and 60 to 65% of a modernization project. So a school like in Palo Alto, and they want to upgrade their school, they might be paying 65%. A school in East Palo Alto, they might be paying 40 to 45% towards this. So the cost on this, the cost to sell these bonds and pay them back would be about $500 million a year over 35 years. And for the local governments, the cost depends on what choices they make on what they're going to improve. And, because are you doing repair and maintenance? Are you doing upgrades? How much you're doing? And the local districts, just like the state funds theirs with these state bonds, the local districts fund theirs with local bonds. So a yes vote says yes. We feel that $10 billion is worth spending on our schools and our students. A no vote says no, we don't believe in selling bonds. What? So once we start moving out of the straight facts, we go into who's spending the money, because that is a very interesting way to figure out. There's the who's supporting it in name, and there's the who's supporting it with their pocketbooks. So there's a group called Californians for Quality School and one called the Coalition for Adequate Schools. Those are basically made up of teachers, teacher federation, the education people, the schools, the school boards, and local construction agency kind of people who were going to build and do this kind of work. And the community colleges similarly. They've raised $3.2 billion, million. A 3.2 million, which also sounds like a lot, is not enough to do a big statewide campaign. It's enough to send flyers home to the parents and things like that around the state, but it's not going to give you big advertising and things like that. So far, nobody has put in any money towards no on Prop 2. So as I said, supporters are teachers and labor and builders, and even the Chamber of Commerce is supporting this one. All of the things the League of Women Voters kind of people are all supporting. And they say this is not enough money, but it will help. It will help get the most emergent need to get the kids out of those unsafe buildings. It's badly needed. There's a quote here from the president of the Salinas Elementary School District saying the school district has not enough money to make basic structural repairs, and every school needs it. And the students need to have a safe place if they're going to learn. Okay? The opponents are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, a Republican. These are the people. Since they didn't put up money, these are the people who are signing the ballot petitions or giving whatever speeches. The Assemblyman Bill Essele, a Republican, one of the assemblymen, and the Reform California PAC. Carl DeMaio is the guy who's made a lot of money, and he's putting a lot of it into his own PAC here, working on changing the way California is run to spend less money and stay within our budget and things like that. Opponents say that this bond is a scam. It's written to sound like it'll help the schools, but there's no guarantees and no accountability. Now, remember, with what they say on either side, we're telling you what they say, not necessarily what we say, but what they say. That there's no guarantees, no accountability. It's a flawed, expensive school bond, and it favors districts who have more money over those who don't, perpetuating the inequities. And now, as I said to you before, and it's true, you can go on to one more, that the schools who have more money, whose voters will vote for bonds and can get over the thresholds, because for local districts, for schools, it's 55%, right? They need 55%, not 50% plus one to pass their bills. For schools that are, those schools are going to have their plans ready and their money ready because they can put the money up first. But there is money. All schools are going to get something, and it's not going to cover everything. All right, so we also always put in editorial statements, and you'll find through this one there's not as many as we would have liked because they're late this year. Usually in September they all start coming out, but a lot of them haven't yet. But the editorials, if you're interested, are worth looking at because they do a really nice analysis. I mean, they can come from the conservative side, they can come from the liberal side, but the analysis they do to back up why is always very interesting. So you can see the LA Times, the Chronicle, the Santa Cruz Sentinel are all in favor. The Mercury News and the Southern Cal News Group are against. So again, as a perspective, this is about selling bonds to upgrade and improve schools. It's been a long time since they've had new money in order to get it, and schools need it. And the most important thing to remember is that even though they don't the smaller schools have a harder time getting it. They have a lower bar to reach to get their shares.
Okay, Proposition 3, to amend the California Constitution, defining marriage as only between a man and a woman. This is a legislative constitutional amendment, so it was put on by a vote of the legislature. Next. The way it is now, in 2008, Prop 8 was passed, which amended the California Constitution to define marriage as only between a man and a woman. In 2015, Supreme Court held that same-sex marriage is protected under the 14th Amendment. And in 2015, the same year, California recognized same-sex marriages. Next. What would Prop 3 do? It would amend the California Constitution. It would repeal the language that is not, or that has been made obsolete by the Supreme Court. And it will add language that states the right to marry is a fundamental right. It will protect both same-sex and interracial marriages. Next. This is just to show you that when they take something out of the Constitution, they really take it out, so that if it passes, that section about between a man and a woman gets X'd out. Next. Let's see, there's no expected changes in revenue or cost to the state or local government. Yes means to amend the California Constitution to remove language limiting the rights to marry, and no means that there's no change to the Constitution. Here, again, very modest amounts of money have been raised by a variety of people. Next. Nobody has put up any money against it. Next. Freedom to marry and Equality California are two longtime civil rights organizations. ACLU is on there, Democratic Party. Next. Supporters say that it proactively protects against any future attempts to restrict marriage rights. It provides protections in case there is any rollback of federal protections. And it doesn't change any laws regarding age requirements, number of people in a marriage, or the rights of clergy to refuse to perform marriage. The opponents are mainly religious organizations. Next. Opponents say that it fixes a problem that doesn't exist, that same-sex marriage is already legal, and that the marriage or the language should remain as a crucial safeguard for traditional marriage. In other words, even though Supreme Court decision is against them, they just don't like it. And yeah, next. Okay, editorial comments. Everybody's has been lining up on this one. We couldn't find anybody against.
Okay, Proposition 4. I got the big money ones this year. At least the ones on bonds. There's bigger money ones later. Okay, climate bonds. This is Proposition 4. It's a legislative bond, and it was put on the ballot by the state legislators. It authorizes, it would like you to authorize $10 billion in bonds for various projects to reduce climate change risks and impacts, and hopefully to reduce costs before they happen. Climate change is negatively affecting all Californians, and those with low incomes or living in low-income neighborhoods are generally especially seriously affected. In 2022, me and numbers, Governor Newsom and the legislature approved a spending package for $54.3 billion that was called the California Climate Commitment, and it had a package of things that they wanted to get done. Because of the budget deficit this year, they had to scale that back. One of the things that had to be cut was $10 billion out of the California climate commitment. What this bond is to get that money back so that all of the things that were identified during all of those meetings could actually be put into place. So this is how they would divide up the $10 billion. The biggest piece here, almost $4 billion for drought, floods, and water supply, because droughts are big here. 1.5 billion for wildfire protection and forest health, and 1.2 billion each for protecting coasts from sea level rise and land conservation and habitat restoration, plus some other smaller things like making sure we've got battery backup for the solar and wind power, fixing our transmission lines, getting them to all corners of the state so we have redundancy built in, and heat farms, all of those kinds of things. All right, what it would do, 40% of the bond money is set aside for disadvantaged communities to help them with what the challenges that they're facing from climate change and from sea level rise. There and a disadvantaged community is somebody where the median household income is considered less than 80% of the area average. So, and giving you an example, I think I said East Palo Alto before. So, East Palo Alto's the median income in East Palo Alto is way more than 80% less than the median income in Palo Alto and Menlo Park and the communities that surround it. So they would be considered a disadvantaged who would be eligible for the money here, eligible for the disadvantaged money. The money's paid out. The rest of it's going to go to mostly statewide projects. Forest fires is a statewide project. Flood, thinning forests, all of the other kinds of things. Transmission lines, those are all statewide projects. The state would, again, pay out between $400 and $650 million a year in interest payments to the bondholders for the 35 to 40 years. The reason this one spreads out wider than the school bonds is they expect to get the school bond money out and into use faster. It takes longer to get these projects ready and shovel ready and ready to be funded and implemented and built. So these are a longer term, which means in earlier years you'd be paying less and later years you pay more. It comes out to the same pretty much, but because of the slant on that, it's not even. And it does enable California. They're hoping it will save money for the state by protecting natural resources that will reduce future costs from damage and disasters. Yes vote supports issuing the bonds, and the no vote says do not issue bonds. So this one has got 690,000. So you've been seeing millions. $690,000 has come from mostly land trust and conservation organizations, and nobody is putting up any money against it. Supporters include the Clean Water Action, the Wildlife Federation, the firefighters. They would really like more money for firefighting and for doing brush reduction and all that kind of preventive maintenance. The Labor Federation, there'll be jobs here, and the League is supporting this one as well. They say it will help protect our communities, the health of our citizens, and the economy in the face of climate change. And they say every Californian has felt the impact of climate change, whether they're having wildfires, heat, flooding, or whatever, sea level. Opponents are the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, GOP Senate Leader Brian Jones and Assembly Member Jim Patterson, who is also a Republican. Opponents say bonds are the most expensive way to pay for government activity and should never be used. That borrowing money rather than paying outright doubles the cost of the projects. And the bonds would fund unproven technologies that we cannot be sure would be successful. Okay, in favor, we have no editorials in favor at this point. Against it is the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, the Mercury News, and the Santa Cruz Sentinel.
Okay. Oh, okay. This is going to be fun. Let's see. It's going to allow Prop 5 would allow 55% approval for certain local bonds. And this was placed on the ballot by the legislature, and it would amend the Constitution. Next. Okay. It proposes to lower the approval rate from 2/3 to 55% for local housing for low-income seniors, disabled veterans, and for infrastructure for police, fire, and public transit. Next. The way it is now is that cities, counties, and special districts borrow money for projects. The bonds are paid back from property taxes. 2/3 of the voters are needed to pass these bonds. Similar bonds, or in other words, similar purposes, issued by the state need only pass by a simple majority. Next. Let's see. What it would do, it would reduce the rate to 55% from 2/3 for certain local bonds. Then, this is when the money is to be paid back, local jurisdictions depend on the property tax. And so it would be added to your property tax. And it would also be allowed to exceed the 1% Prop 13 limit. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Next. Fiscal impact on the state, it's unknown. Local governments, it will depend on whether local jurisdictions are able to pass these bonds or not. And in the places where they are able to pass them, then they would have higher property taxes to repay them. Next. And yes means that certain types of bonds could be approved with 55% instead of 2/3, and that it permits the property tax to exceed the 1% limit of Prop 13 to pay back this particular bond. And the no vote means that 2/3 majority will remain as the requirement. Next. The yes, Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, people who own Facebook, thrown in $5 million, which for them seems a little measly. I don't know. doesn't show serious intent. Next. These people are serious. So the realtors and the business roundtable say no way, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. We think that a rule of thumb is about $10 million. If you can raise $10 million, you can do a media campaign all in California. So I would say expect to see a media campaign on Prop 5 between now and the election. Next. Supporters, the firefighters, again, they're always looking for money. Let's just leave it that way. Labor Foundation, the counties would like to raise money this way. Democratic Party, next. They say that it gives communities more control over their affordable housing needs, because once you start getting matching funds from the state, you're accepting a whole lot of um, restrictions and directives from the state. If you can raise all of this money locally, you decide what to do. And they say that it shifts decisions away from too distant state government and serious matters such as who can marry, who can receive government services, for some reason in California are settled by a simple majority. And some of those I think should be 2/3, but it is a little odd that some things are required at 2/3 and some things that greatly affect people's lives is just a simple majority. Next, opponents, the Realtors, Chamber of Commerce, Howard Jarvis, Republican Party. Next, the opponents say makes it too easy for local government to increase property tax, that if state politicians see that local governments are able to raise money more easily for, say, affordable housing, that they would start making supporting it less and making locals raise more money for those sort of things. And finally, the third rail of California politics, Prop 13 should be protected. Those in favor, LA Times; against, Mercury, the Southern California News Group, and the Chronicle. Interestingly, the Chronicle is against it because to try to get the realtors on board, which they didn't do, the proponents of 5 put in a clause that said, no, it isn't. I went through it and I read it. That money raised this way cannot be used to buy and tear down single-family dwellings. So it kind of perpetuates the single-family dwelling and doesn't allow it to be replaced by high-density housing. Okay, next. Just in perspective, Prop 13 passed in 1978, limited property tax to 1% of assessed value, required 2/3 majority in local elections to raise specific taxes. In other words, money that would not go into the local general fund, but to, for example, pay back bonds. Prop 39 was passed in 2000 that reduced the threshold for school bonds. And in recent elections, the Legislative Analyst Office estimates that 20 to 50% more of the local bond measures would have passed under the 55% instead of the 2/3.
Okay, we're going a whole different direction this time. We're going to talk about ending forced prison labor. So it's a legislative constitutional amendment. So the legislator put it on, but it amends the California Constitution. So in California, incarcerated persons must carry out the work assignments that they're given or face punishment. And work assignments range from anything from working in the kitchen to mending clothes, to cleaning, to making license plates and tailoring, to cleaning up garbage on the side of the highways, to assisting firefighters in big fires. So what other states have done, did you skip a slide on me? Oh, and incarcerated persons are paid less than $1 an hour. Depends. I mean, people who work on firefighting do get paid more. They get a hazard pay for the work required. Though, remember, they do get, whether they want it or not, room and board as well. So what other states have done, there's 8 states that allow slavery or servitude for punishment for crime. And we did get to ask that question. Slavery means you don't belong to yourself. I can say, you're going to go work in the chicken plucking factory and we're taking at normal wages. You're going to work there. We're taking your money. Okay. And servitude means you have to do the jobs that we send you to do, but it doesn't mean that we own you body and soul. We don't they don't earn, they're just earning in the things. But yes, for firefighting, they get hazard pay for this or whatever. There's different things. In 8 states, they can only do servitude. You have to work, but you have to be treated humanely. Slavery doesn't have the humanity thing part in it. 42 states offer some kind of time off of your sentence for work credit, for drug rehab, for vocational training kind of things. Now, in other states so there's been a movement to get rid of this involuntary servitude. As you said, there was only 16 states left that still have involuntary servitude in their constitutions. In the last few years, these 7 states have done it. In Vermont, in particular, Vermont is the only state in the union, and they used to allow servitude for payment of debt, not paying your fines. And so they had a whole list of things where you could do involuntary work till you paid off your things. So they got rid of all of them out of their constitution in 2022. Next. So what Prop 6 would do is it would amend the California Constitution it would take out the language allowing involuntary servitude to punish a crime. It would add language prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude absolutely. Now, that is not in connection with being in prison. That includes people who do trafficking, where they bring people in, take away their papers, and make slaves out of them. Any of those kind of things. So that adds part of the law against them. It prohibits disciplining incarcerated persons for refusing a work assignment, and it authorizes awarding time credits for voluntary participation in work assignments. The fiscal impact on this one is uncertain. I mean, there's all sorts of ways it can go up or down. The prisoners could say, well, we like it to choose a work assignment that we like better, so we work more. They could be paid more and the costs go up. We could have to hire contractors because nobody would do something and costs go up. If the work's better, costs don't change. If people do lots of things to get their time off by going through school and working hard and getting drug treatment and things, they might get out of prison faster and costs go down. Okay. So a yes vote means remove the language involving involuntary servitude from our Constitution and add the ability to give them time for good behavior. And a no vote means do not change the Constitution. So right now there's been $727,000 raised by a group of social justice civil rights groups. Nobody's so far donated money against it. Supporters include the state, the legislatures, and the black caucuses, in particular, and the labor, who think they'll get maybe more work. And they think that some of these prisoners are doing things that people should get paid to do. But in particular, this is the Black Caucus and civil rights groups, and I'll give you that in just one moment. Because, and it's the third bullet down. Right now, we have 94,000 Californians in state prison. 28% of them are black, and blacks only make up 6% of the California population. So they feel that this is a punishment that's falling harder on the black population. Again, they think that servitude is just one step down from slavery, and our Constitution should reflect what our values really are. Okay? No opponents have been identified to date. The opponents say, despite the fact that they haven't been identified, they do write statements on the ballot and things. the California prisoners should not be subject to abuse. However, inmates should not be able to say whether they're willing to do chores or not, or sit in their cell or not do anything. And they say that this is all about it's cloaked in slavery and things, but it's really about being able to turn down work. The Sacramento Bee is in favor. The Mercury News is against.
Okay, Prop 32, raising the minimum wage. It's an initiative. In other words, somebody went around, got a lot of signatures, and put it on the ballot. 2016, the minimum wage was raised to $15 an hour for employers with 26 more or more workers in 2022. And then in 2023, it was raised for all other workers to $15 an hour. Cost of living adjustment is given if the inflation is more than 3.5%. Next. Some workers already get mandated minimum wages higher than $18 an hour, such as fast food workers, healthcare workers, and cities with their own minimum wage laws. Next. What Prop 32 would do is in 2025, it would raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour for larger employers, and then the next year for all employers. And most important, it would increase the minimum wage by the consumer price index, or it would be indexed to the consumer price index for urban workers. That's what CPI-W means. Fiscal impact, it's just like, oh, who knows? Sort of like it could push up wages for other workers. It would increase business costs for some businesses and therefore lower profits. Jobs might go up and down. Anyways, it seems like somebody should be able to tell us, that if the higher minimum wage pushes some people out of the poverty range, that there would be fewer people in Medi-Cal and food stamps and therefore saving money. This happens so often that you would think that there should be some formula for it, but we just keep arguing over the same things all the time, maybe because there's just too many variables to know what's going to happen. But it does have a lot of effect on people who are employing minimum wage employees and the employees themselves. Next. Yes means that the minimum wage will be increased to $18 an hour, and future indexing based on the consumer price index. No means to not increase the minimum wage. Next. This was put on by basically one entrepreneur who grew up poor with in a single family and sort of has dedicated his fortune to as an anti-poverty advocate. Next. A few people, I don't know, we were kind of laughing when we saw this. It's like, they put in a little money, kind of a tokenism, but we're not quite sure what this whole response is about. But very little money's been put up on the no, although the people who are on the list you would expect to see there. Next. Supporters, wow. This is just a proposition that's not getting very much buzz. I'm not sure why. I have my own theories. Next. Oh, yeah. That's what it was. Thank you. Okay, I did it. All right. Supporters say cost of living is going up, but wages have not increased. It would improve the standard of living for millions of workers. Next. The opponents are the groups that you would expect. Next. And they say that markets, not politicians or bureaucrats, should dictate the financial matters for employees. That will hurt businesses, small businesses especially, that are more vulnerable to the impact of higher operating costs. And next. Editorials, again, really quiet. Nobody's come out for it. Only the Sentinel has come out against it. Where's the Southern California News Group? They've been kind of quiet. The Mercury. Okay. Again, just an odd little thing that's sitting out there for you to vote on. Okay. Prop 33, local governments and rent control. This is an initiative. It was put on by people signing petitions. Next. Prop 33 proposes to repeal the state law that prohibits rent control on single family homes and any housing, apartments or single family dwellings built after 1995. All right. See, renters pay a lot. Well, homeowners, buyers pay a lot. Everybody knows that. Some localities have rent control laws which limit how much landlords can increase rents, but this is only on multi-family units built before 1995. So next. Before, if it's built after 1995, you cannot have rent control on it. So, and you wonder why you're living in your old house. No, you want, okay. Among other housing laws, the one that's most applicable here is the Costa-Hawkins Act of 1995. And, okay, it prohibits rent control on single-family homes, any housing built after 1995, and it does not limit what the landlord can charge to a new tenant. Next. Oh, next. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Prop 33. Thank you. All right. Let's see. We have this little banter that people might think we're married. No, we're not married. Okay. All right. That was like that James Gardner commercial with, yeah. Okay. Prop 33 would repeal the Costa-Hawkins. It would prohibit any state limitation on local rent control. And however, the landlord's right to a fair return on investment would be retained. Next. That's why they came out of court decisions. That's what established the landlord's right to a fair return. Let's see. Fiscal impact. If this proposition passes, it's likely that there will be more local rent control, and it's likely that properties that fall under this rent control will not increase in value or might even decrease compared to non-rent controlled properties, because the owners would not have as much latitude to do what they want with those properties. Some tenants would certainly benefit from caps on rent increases. Next. Yes, prohibits state law from limiting local rent control laws. No means retain Costa-Hawkins prohibitions on local government. Let's see. This one, very serious money is being put up by a single donor, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. It does have the word AIDS in it and healthcare, but it is an organization that has expanded into a healthcare system with multiple clinics, and they're also involved in affordable housing. Next. Let's see. No was also a very robust amount of money. You could easily see Prop 33 on your television set soon. The Apartment Association, Association of Realtors, National Association of Realtors. Any of you who are realtors, yes, this is where your dues are going. Yeah. Okay, next. My mother was a realtor, so okay. Supporters are the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, California Nurses Association, Democratic Party, ACLU. Next, the supporters say that Prop 33 would permit communities to protect renters, and that it would give communities local control. Next. Opponents, same people who are giving money, plus the Republican Party. Next. While opponents say that while Prop 33 could help some tenants, in the long run, it would worsen the housing crisis by making investment in new housing less appealing, and it could reduce property taxes. Values. Although in California, what I would say is that the value of the property wouldn't go up as much as properties not under rent control. I don't know. Has any property in California gone down other than those that got swept by wildfire? Okay. Nobody's for it. Mercury News, Daily News, and San Francisco Chronicle are against it. One thing I'd like to point out is rent control is not the only way that you can give tenants some protections. For example, laws that prevent eviction without cause can be passed without rent control. There's also other measures such as rent subsidies or rezoning for higher densities.
Prop 34, another initiative statute. And this one, the title is, it would require certain participations in the Medi-Cal prescription drug program to spend 98% of their revenue on patient care. And it's an initiative statute. Yep. All right, next. So when we were flush in 2019, Governor Newsom added prescription care. I mean, Medi-Cal is the poorest in this state, get Medi-Cal, and they did not have prescription drug coverage. So Newsom used some of the surplus money to put in a program by executive order that would make sure that these people, once they got their health care, they could afford to get the drugs that they needed to get healthy. The LA-based AIDS Healthcare Foundation, so you just heard about them in the last one, is a major Medi-Cal healthcare provider. They've got 56 clinics in California. They have clinics. They started out just helping AIDS patients, and they have expanded since then as AIDS got under control here to low-income, homeless seniors. That's who their basic clientele is. They are in 46 countries. They have clinics all over Africa where AIDS is running rampant. So they do a lot of things. They get a lot of money from their healthcare foundation. They also have a lot of donors. So they are also a major proponent of rent control. And they have put, just like the one you just saw, numerous initiatives on the ballot for rent control because they feel that their clients need rent control so they can afford to not be homeless people. Next. Now, Medi-Cal providers get paid on a per capita basis, and they get to buy discounted drugs from the federal government. So they're like any other managed care thing. If you aren't too sick and don't need too many drugs, you're pretty cheap and there's money that profit above you. If you're a sick person and you need lots of stuff, you cost money to the healthcare organization. That's how managed care works. And we're going to talk about managed care again in the next one. Okay, providers are allowed, when they buy the drugs, discounted drugs from the federal government, they can resell them at a higher cost than they paid for them to help fund their operations, because this is for Medi-Cal patients. And it's all over the country, so it's whatever version of Medi-Cal, Minnesota Cal, whatever Cal. The AIDS Foundation has chosen to use some of its income for support political causes that they believe support their clients, like rent control. Okay? So Proposition 34 would establish a new category of entities providing Medi-Cal services called prescription drug price manipulators. How's that for a bit of a pejorative? Or it would require these people to spend 98% of the revenue from their prescription drug program on direct patient care and not to engage in unprofessional conduct or conduct contrary to public health or welfare or safety. It would add punishments if they were doing any of these things, take away their licenses and take away their tax exempt status. And it would also, and this is the sweetener in this thing, it would permanently authorize the Medi-Cal RX program. So it wouldn't be an executive order that could be gotten rid of by a different government. Next. Now, this only provides to Medi-Cal prescription drug providers who participate in the drug discount program, have spent more than $100 million on purposes unrelated to patient care in the last 10 years, and own or operate or have previously owned or operated one or more multifamily dwellings. Okay? So there is only one Medi-Cal provider who this applies to. Guess who? All right. Exactly. There's a limited fiscal impact because few entities meet the criteria. There will be some increase in enforcement costs, but the costs will be covered by new fees on the providers. California could save more if any of the providers spent more of their money, made even less overhead costs, and it would cost California more if any of these providers went out of business and said this wasn't worth it. So the yes means that certain healthcare entities would have to follow the new rules, and otherwise they don't get to be healthcare providers anymore. And a no vote means no, we wouldn't change the rules like this. So the $28.6 million has been spent so far by the Apartment Owners Association, the Association of Realtors, and the same group who was opposed to rent control. And $545,000 has been raised by the AIDS Foundation and other people who really want rent control. So supporters, again, the Apartment Association, Republican Party, the real estate agent associations have done this, are supporting this. Next. Supporters say this would force the worst abusers of the drug discount program, like Weinstein's AIDS Healthcare Foundation, back to the program's original mission to provide health care for low-income patients. It's focusing only on the worst offenders. It will assure they're using good taxpayer dollars for direct care, prevents overcharging the governments, though we haven't seen anything about overcharging the governments. I have to say that. I'm sorry. I meant to take that line out. And and as long as they meet the requirements, they can keep providing the care they're caring. Opponents, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, Housing is a Right, and the League of Women Voters say this is just a deceptive, unconstitutional ballot measure cleverly disguised as a patient protection bill that is going to hurt both patients and low-income renters. It's only focused at one organization, and the apartment association has not shown that they represent patients, but they have shown they might be willing to deceive the voters to increase their profit. The Santa Cruz Sentinel is in favor of Prop 34, and they had a limited thing on that, a limited caveat. They said they don't think it's good law, but they do think that the capitation bill should be changed to make the costs more directly patient. They said, but this is not the right vehicle for it, but it should be addressed. And the other two say this is just a bad law. Okay, this is the only place we have told you what the editorials say because they seem quite apropos to us. So the Mercury News and the East Bay Times said, this is a measure best described as revenge of the landlords. It's an abusive use of the state's initiative system to silence one political opponent, and it would set a horrible precedent if it passes and survives legal challenges. The San Francisco Chronicle says it's a dangerous precedent of interest groups using the initiative process to limit other groups from doing the same thing. It addresses issues that require comprehensive, nonpartisan ballot measure reform, but not a slew of slanted measures targeting individual political players. Okay? This one makes permanent a per capita tax on managed care organizations to increase Medi-Cal funding. All right. You all know what a managed care organization is, right? They get a pay per person. California in 2009 came up with the great idea that that would be someplace they could tax to get general fund revenue. They get about $5 billion a year in taxes off taxing a per person price on this thing. It all goes. The current tax is going to expire in 2026. This is a way to extend the tax. Okay, but it, right now, let's see. Oh, I might have to fix this. Okay, good. Now you're going to confuse me because I'm trying to go fast. I do better going in a straight line. Okay, so the money goes. The federal government has to approve this change because they pay half of Medi-Cal. This is the Medicare expansion. All right, next. And I think I've said all of that. Go to the next one. All right, what this would do would make the tax that there is right now permanent. It would create new rules on how the money is used. The money can no longer just go to the general fund to do what the government and legislature thinks is the best use for it. And it would change which programs got funded. Right now, you've probably all heard the complaints. The money that the state gives Medi-Cal has to all go to patient services, so doctors and hospitals and healthcare providers get a small proportion, and they would like more. Okay, and then we'll go up. Next. So if this passes, all that $5 billion in tax revenue is going to go to Medi-Cal. And it's going to go, it will subsidize some drug prices, and it will give a lot of money to doctors, hospitals, and healthcare providers. That's where the money is basically going to go. It's going to increase there. It's not increasing patient services. Okay? So as I said, $2 to $5 billion a year increased tax revenues to Medi-Cal, and a little bit less in the general fund is not going to get that $2 to $5 billion for it to spend, and but they will get a little reimbursement for what it costs them to collect the money. So, yes, supports a permanent authorization and giving them and directing that the money has to go to Medi-Cal. No says no, don't do this new rule. All right, there's $48 million have been donated to this one by the healthcare associations, doctors, first responders, ambulances, hospitals, healthcare services. Nobody has put any money up against it. Supporters are medical, dental, healthcare providers, and the Democratic and Republican parties. Supporters say that having dedicated funds for Medi-Cal will be better. It will protect access to health because the program's not going away. That 99% of these funds are going to go to patient care, which does include paying the doctor. I did look that up. Okay, opponents are a small group and the League of Women Voters is against it. Opponents say it restricts how tax revenue is spent. It hamstrings future legislators and governors' ability to balance the state budget. It's a well-meaning but misguided effort to provide more steady funding to Medi-Cal and improve reimbursement rates for medical providers, and it locks in funding for the special interest groups who are funding the measure. Okay, Sacramento Bee is in favor of it. Mercury News, Chronicle, Sentinel are against it.
Prop 36, drug and theft crime penalties and treatment mandated felonies. Okay, 2014, voters approved Prop 47, which sought to reduce prison overcrowding by reducing some theft and drug crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. It's always been controversial. Many prosecutors and police and retailers blame it for an increase in property crimes. Next. Prop 36 would roll back some of the Prop 47 reforms by reclassifying some drug and theft crimes from misdemeanors back to felonies. It would create a new category of treatment mandated felony offenses where and basically defendants could not contest charges and undergo drug treatment and penalties if you don't complete the drug treatment. Next. It also adds fentanyl to the list of serious drug offenses. Thefts of property valued less than $950 will become felonies for individuals with 2 or more prior theft convictions. Next. The impact to the state, because one would expect that there would be more incarcerations and longer terms, that the costs of the criminal justice system will go up. Next. And it would be anticipated the same thing would happen at the local level. Next. Let's see. Potential savings if punishments or mandated treatment reduces crime, or potential expenses if it doesn't reduce crime. Next. Yes means partial repeal of Prop 47. No means leave it as it is. Next. Modest amount, just enough to do a statewide campaign paid for by retailers. Next. People interested in social justice have put up a modest amount of money. Next. The supporters are similar to the people that we've seen before, district attorneys, peace officers, Republican Party, and the retailers. Next. They say that Prop 36 is a moderate midpoint between excessive tough on crime approach of decades ago and the leniency of Prop 47. and that drug users and addicts could face penalties that would force them into treatment. Next. Opponents, all the Democrats, basically, ACLU, League of Women Voters. Next. Opponents say no studies on criminal justice have shown that harsher punishment prevents crimes. Takes the same approach as the discredited war on drugs, diverts money from other causes, and studies have shown that mandated drug treatment is rarely successful. Next. For it, Marin IJ, Mercury News, nobody's been listed as against it. Perspective, Prop 47 was not like a reform based on, we can do better than what we're doing now in terms of rehabilitation and such. It was just to get guys out of prison, people out of prison, because there was overcrowding and there were court-ordered releases. So it was put together, and this is kind of like some people say, well, they went too far in letting people out. We want to keep a few. So that's Prop 47.